We got Mike Russo of The Athletic here Monday morning before the matchup with the Seattle Kraken to end the road trip. Guys, we just had the best November we could have really asked for. What are our early thoughts here with this road trip to kick off December?
Well, I think it started off well in Edmonton, right? It felt like they were, bounced back from the disappointing Sabres loss a couple days before, but it really went off the rails a bit in Calgary. That was kind of a rare clunker for the team. They really had nothing that game, and against Vancouver they were a little bit better, but the big picture thing is you lost to three of the worst teams in the league in the last week, right? And you're still having trouble secondary scoring, which has been an issue at times when Kirill and Boldy aren't going. So I think Nico Sturm, put it one way where the days are over, where you just say this is an easy win or this is an easy win or this is a hard team because it's a parity. It's been so big in this league, but it was still Vancouver on a back-to-back, and they had no Pettersson and everything. And so you would think they would be able to find a way to win that game. But I don't think it's sounding alarms right now, but it definitely is something that should get their attention heading into the rest of this month here.
Yeah, no doubt about that. And I do think that, I was a little surprised at how positive they were after the Vancouver game. But, again, you look at the analytics, and I guess they had reason to be. My biggest concern with that game is that bad habits were creeping in. They just got way too cute in the first period. And that stuff always comes back to haunt this team because they don't have the secondary scoring to make up for it, usually in the second and third periods. And, they were overpassing and trying to do, cutesy plays. And, this team, if November showed anything, because they weren't scoring a ton in November either, it's that they got to play a direct brand of hockey. But to Joe's point, what concerns me right now is just the absolute lack of scoring on this team by everybody, not named Kirill Kaprizov and Matt Boldy. Everybody. They have almost half the team's goals. And, Ryan Hartman scored twice since opening night. Marcus Foligno didn't have a goal upon him getting hurt. Joel Eriksson Ek only has 4 goals this year, and it sure looks like, while he's still a big menace on the net front and as good a shutdown center as there is in the league, it does feel like the abuse that he's taken over the years has caught up to him offensively, and he's just not getting the areas to really create as much as we've seen. And he's playing with a couple guys that produce points. So, that would be concerning to me. The fourth line is sometimes unplayable. Certainly don't give anything offensively. And that's a problem. Yakov Trenyan's their leading scorer in the last 4 games, points wise. So it's just, that's the area. Obviously Marco Rossi's hurt. I do think this team is not the same whenever Foligno's out of the lineup. Hinestroza was playing well, but this is why Bill Guerin, from the beginning of the year, has said that he wants to go big game hunting, and that's why Chris Kelleher, their assistant GM, is starting 3 days of pro scouting meetings today. And then I do think the Wild are going to try, especially if losses do mount here, to be aggressive here and make moves in a league where there's just no trades that are ever made ever in this league. There has not been a substantive move in the NHL since July, essentially. And that was Dakota Joshua. So, it is hard to make a league trade right now.
Well, and I wonder too, I know he wants to go big game hunting. I think they've needed a scoring winger since July 1, but who's out there really? Yeah. You look at the trade board that our colleague Chris Johnston does, right? There are some names out there. I think the name that surfaced more with the Wild is Sherwood with Vancouver, and he's an effective player. Does he answer the question for secondary scoring?
I don't think so. Maybe he does. It can't hurt, I guess. He got off with 12 goals in the first 20 games, but I think he's come back to reality here. I did like him the other night. He's a bit of a hothead, though. Which
you get along well. You would get along.
Yeah, exactly. on a team that has been extremely disciplined this year, that would be my only issue with bringing him in. But it does seem like this is the type of player that they always go after. It's the Justin Brazos and the Yakov Trenyans of the world, and aim higher. And for a team that doesn't have a lot of trade assets, because they don't have a lot of guys that they can move on their NHL roster or that they would want to move, if you like we saw in the Juracek deal, if you all of a sudden start throwing young assets away in this type of trade, it could potentially take you out of something later in the season because you've traded your first round pick or your a prospect like a Liam Ogren or somebody like that. So I think that unless they sustain more and more injuries here, they obviously know when Marcus Foligno is going to be back and when Hinnestros is going to be back. But I do think that they should be a little careful here on this one.
Well, it could also, like, in the whole idea which we wrote before when the sky was falling, right? Like, it falls on the best trade they can make is their own guys producing, and you have a number of guys on this team that have been able to produce before. Johansson was hot at the start of the year. You have guys like Foligno is not a guy who usually doesn't score in 24, 25 games. Like he'll chip in here and there. Ryan Hartman has the pedigree of having scoring. So, if the power play struggle was just doing right now and they're not getting other scoring, then they're going to be putting a lot of their goaltenders to win them games, which they have before. But there's bound to be a regression to the mean here where Wallstedt, won't necessarily have 4 goals like the other night, but if you give up 1 or 2 goals, you give yourself a chance to win.
They've definitely put a lot of pressure on their goalies. They never practice, so I think that doesn't keep your goalies sharp, even though you're saying they're fresh because you're alternating them. I've never seen a team go on a 4-game trip where they don't practice once. That's crazy to me. I don't. I get that their rest is a weapon, and they're this has been a tough travel where they've had a couple ridiculous flight issues. One where they had to fly in a plane from Seattle, another where they had to fly in a flight to Calgary. But those practices were canceled before those, so they were never practicing on this trip. So I think that hurts you too. You can't get all your work done in a 20-minute morning skate. It's just it makes no sense to me. Plus, you're in a hotel all day. Like sometimes it's nice to just go to the rink and suit up for 30 minutes.
It's only like an hour or 2 out of your day. And like I saw after the skate in Vancouver, like Carrillo and Zuccarello were on the ice for like 25 minutes after the skate, right? They were out there working on stuff, like some guys like the idea of going to the rink, even if it's an optional or whatever like that, just to kind of get the routine or do the work out there or whatever. I know they have activation stuff now, right, or kind of things, but it does I know there's some skates that can be unnecessary, but I think overall practices in a league where you can do very little teaching and sometimes is very important. So on Friday, there'll be a practice. So look forward to 5 days from now. There'll be a practice for the Minnesota Wild.
Well, you'll be there.
Yeah, I will. I would not miss it for the world, Mike. Not miss it for the world. A guy we talked to the other night after the Vancouver game is Tarasenko. He came back after missing 7 games due to injuries, played in 4. I believe he's had 5 shots on goal in that span, no points. Clearly fighting at this. The chances he had the other night in Vancouver, third period, the perfect pass by Ryan Hartman in front, couldn't get a stick on it. Another one, a one-timer, he couldn't really get a full throttle on that one. So I wonder what's next for him. They can see if he can work himself out of this a little bit, because they signed him with the idea, or traded for him with the idea that at a buy low situation, you could maybe get some 15 goals, 16 goals out of a guy like that would be okay, but now he's at 2 in the first 23. I guess what do you see in Tarasenko, and like what could they do, I guess, to get something out of here?
Yeah, other than praying he gets out of it, I don't know, because the analytics say it all. He's any line he's on, he's cratering it, and it's just that simple. And he's not producing nearly enough to make up for that. Look, I watched him in Florida. They tried to act like he was a huge piece of that Stanley Cup team. We saw what Brad Marchand was able to do with Listerinen and Lindell, and we saw what he was able to do with Listerinen and Lindell. And he had one good playoff round in that entire series. And then in Detroit the last couple of years, he was not good at all. And, this is not just an imagination. Sometimes they think that guys are just going to magically, turn into the player that they expect him to be, and become a renaissance man. But this has been the player that we've seen the last couple of years. So I think it's a major problem. And I do think there's going to come a point, if he continues to play like this, that it's going to come to head. First of all, they're going to get bodies back, like Hinnestros, Foligno, and Rossi. And so at some point they're going to have to, you can only go, further down the lineup so far. And he's obviously not a fourth liner. So, I covered Peter Sikora here, many, many, many eons ago. And I remember I was in Salt Lake City once, flying through, going down to Phoenix. And Alan Walsh called me up and just annihilated. God, who was the coach at the time? Was it Todd Richards? It was either Todd Richards. It was about his ice time, and I had in the lobby of the hotel when I got there, I had to get his response to that. Can't remember if it was Yo or Richards, and it just continued to go nowhere. And finally, at the end of January, they had a mutual termination, and he just, I think, re-signed in Jersey or went back to Europe, or it just was not going well. So, I mean, that's where I could see this going, is that at some point here, Bill Guerin's going to have to get on the horn with Pat Brisson and work out something, whether it's finding him a home somewhere else, which I can't imagine there's a lot of teams that would want him, and he would have to waive. Again, the Wild had Detroit wanted to make a move so badly that they traded him for future consideration. So you're either going to have to do that. There's going to have to be maybe a mutual termination where he walks away, which I doubt that. It becomes more complicated with Detroit retaining money, so I don't even know if it's doable. Or the other option is just at some point maybe place him on waivers, and then you make a decision from there. The Wild once had Kyle Quincy around Thanksgiving, went to St. Louis. He was like -3, went to Winnipeg. He was -3. Wild put him on waivers. They plucked Nate Prosser back off waivers to replace him, and basically told Kyle to go home, that he didn't even have to go to Iowa, and just paid him the rest of the season. So there's going to come a point where this becomes an issue. I mean, so to me, it's up to Vlad. They've done everything to give him the opportunity to be good this year. But really, clearly, the guy that we saw that looked so good in those scrimmages in training camp, it just shows why those are scrimmages in training camp. You know, he's playing minor leaguers and a mix of minor leaguers and NHLers, and there's no checking. And, sometimes there's checking. I think Stevie Lescavar wishes there was no checking. Foligno broke his wrist, so that's why I made that joke. But, it's just not the same player, and it's a major issue.
Yeah, and they've done everything they possibly could, right? I remember Hines flew to Florida and had that long 5-hour dinner with Tarasenko in the summertime to get to know him, get to see what he needs or make him a better player, get the most out of him. And Hines, every time we ask guys about the other day, and he's very positive and publicly on Tarasenko and all the little things he does, and he's a smart player, and he does these things behind the scenes, and you can tell why he's a pro. And I understand all that. I think there's obviously value to him as a person and as a player. I just think that when a team that's starving for scoring right now, like they need something's got to give at some particular point, and perhaps he steps out of it. Maybe he gets some sort of run here or whatever like that. But there haven't been nights where you're like, oh, he had 4 chances tonight. He just due for a goal. I really haven't seen that.
When you play it as poorly as him, you got to catch that puck by Hartman. I mean, that's a 1-goal game in the third period. And I do think John is trying to treat him with kid gloves, because he's a complicated guy. It didn't end well in St. Louis. It didn't end well in Detroit. A lot of it's because he doesn't like where his usage is in the lineup or things like that. And so I think that John's well aware. I remember John saying about that one big thing that he met with Tarasenko about in Florida was why Tarasenko thought things didn't go well in certain places, or how he likes to be used, or his relationship with the coach. So when you have somebody that has that type of history, I think that you try to, make sure that you do everything possible not to slaughter him publicly. But there's just going to come a point where, look, I mean, this team was rolling. They were 7-0, and they've been a different team since he's returned to the lineup. That's just a fact. Whether it's a coincidence or not, we don't know. But the analytics sure don't look that way, and the actual real stats certainly don't look that way.
And the other guy that I feel like it's been a different conversation every time we've had you on the past couple of months, Mike, but Danila Yurov is a guy that's going to be interesting to watch here as people get healthy. It's kind of become the auto reply for you guys in all the online discourse of like, will we ever actually be healthy? Will someone else just get hurt? But like a fully healthy squad, where do you see Danila Yurov slotting in long-term this season? This interview is brought to you by our friends at Waggle Golf. Waggle Golf believes what you wear on the course should reflect your individuality, who you are, where you're from, your hobbies, interests, and passions. All the stuff that makes you, well, you. That's why every design is inspired by the desire to create a piece of apparel that strikes a chord when you see it, that makes you say, wow, that was made for me. Because in a lot of ways, it was. Ready to get your waggle on? Go to getyourwagalon.com, throw in promo code SP10 at checkout to take 10% off your entire order.
I don't know. I mean, it depends who they trade for. If they trade for somebody, I mean, Johansson's obviously started to quiet down, but I don't think that, they're at a point at all where they would break up that line. And obviously, Zuccarello and Kaprizov are healthy. Your Rossi's healthy. He's at a minimum now going to be third line or lower. But if Foligno's back, it really depends. Could he be third line center? I think it's very clear to Joe and myself right now that Ryan Hartman's in the doghouse. I mean, you don't get much lower than fourth line center. He played there the other night. They did try to move him up at times. That fourth line the other night was creating chances. So that's the best Liam Ogren, I think, has looked in a while, because he probably had an NHL quality center to his right, as opposed to who he normally has on his right. So I do think that most likely he's going to be on the third line. And the question is he left wing, right wing, center? A lot will depend on Foligno back and things like that. But I think they'd like to get him at least in the top 9.
And I think it's a good thing. I mean, even though it's a small sample size, it's a good thing for the organization to know that, hey, Yurov can play in this spot, that he can hold his own with Kaprizov and Zuccarello. If you're thinking big picture, long term with your roster, it's good to know that. They might not have known that and Rossi not got injured. Give him that chance. I don't think he got that top line role had Rossi not got injured. So I think,
and that is how it works. I mean, I know fans like guys to just be anointed and put there, but you need opportunity. And then when you get that opportunity, you better take advantage of it quick, because that guy is eventually going to come back to the lineup. And that's what Liam Ogren has not done yet, is he's had the opportunity. He was playing third line left wing for a while. Throughout camp, he was on the second line, and he just hasn't taken advantage of it. So next time he gets that opportunity, he better, if he gets that opportunity, because I think that, Joe and I have a sense that he might have been the player that the Wild talked about in the Sherwood trade so far with Vancouver. So, who knows what his future is, if it's here or elsewhere. But I love that Yurov's taken advantage of it. Rossi did as well when he eventually came back from the minors and had that opportunity. And that's what you got to do. You only get so many. There's been a lot of great players that had to spend their entire careers in the AHL because they never either got that chance or took advantage of that opportunity. So Liam's got to do that. But back to Yurov, what I love about him is just, remember the biggest issue that John Hines had with him in training camp was board battles, because it's a smaller rink, it's different than KHL. And that's the area where I just think that he has done such a much better job. You could just see him battle and win his battles. Sometimes he still makes mistakes. He had the turnover there that led to the big time odd man rush. I think it was against Buffalo. That cost the Wild in that game. And then the other night in Vancouver, he made such a smart play on that one play where he breaks the stick. He gets Zuccarello to cover for him. He goes to the bench, gets a new stick. So he was smart enough to get Zuccarello to come and support. And then he gets that new stick. He comes on and he takes a terrible pinch, loses his stick. And then it's just, a goal against from there that obviously Wally should have stopped. But so there's going to still be mistakes. Everybody makes them. Look at defensemen, right? I mean, these guys play 25 to 30 shifts a game, and we all expect it to go perfect. It's not feasible.
In this week's Insider, Mike talked about the Olympics, and it could be like almost half the team joining you in Milan, come to the Minnesota Wild Europe version over there. But we thought there'd be a number of guys that would go, just the big names that we watch all the time. But like, who are some other guys like on the bubble, or who are the guys that maybe we didn't have on the initial list that are going to be going?
Yeah, I mean, look, they could have up to 11 guys. Somebody tweeted me today, Spurgeon. Spurgeon's playing well lately, but he's not making Team Canada for the Olympics. But yeah, no, they could have up to 11 guys. 3 of them are minor leaguers. David Juracek and David Spacek are almost certainly going to be there. Spacek, definitely. I mean, This guy's played so well for their Team Czechia coach at the Worlds in the last couple of years. He's always great on the international stage. Juracek, I can't imagine that they're not going to take also. Remember, the Czechs only have 2 NHL defensemen in Hronek and Ratko Gudas, so I got to think that Juracek's there. And then Sam Hlavaj is Slovakia's number 1 in the Olympics. I mean, he went 3-0 with like a ridiculous goals against and save percentage in the Olympic qualifiers. a couple years ago, and actually I was right around there at the time, covering it. I can't remember where it was, but I was right there in Prague, I think, for the NHL media tour, and I was thinking about trying to make it down there, and I just couldn't do it. And then obviously, so you got Boldy and Faber 100% going to be on the American team. Eriksson, Brodin, and Gustafsson, Joe and I are assuming, are 100% for the Team Sweden team. Nico Sturm is the only Wild player that's already selected for Team Germany. Then I mentioned the three. So the question is, where do they go from there? Does Jesper Wallstedt have a spot? We did independently confirm yesterday that he was registered this summer, even though I don't know if Jesper even knows that, because he has kept on telling Joe and I that he has never heard a word from the Swedish Olympic team and definitely isn't in the drug testing protocol. So that might be a surprise to Jesper that he is at least in the mix. The question is, he said to me the other day before they left for the road trip, the body of work is in his mind big, and he can't see himself making the team over Gus or Ullmark or Markstrom. But Ullmark and Markstrom have not been very good. And if you're going to go with the best Swedish goalie right now, it's Jesper. So we'll see where that goes. And then Marcus Johansson, they're going to have to make a decision. Do you take the veteran that has a long history with Team Sweden, or do you take like a William Eklund or, a young guy that's got a long future with Team Sweden? Marcus has been great this year for the Wild. Sam Ullum, their coach, has always talked really well about Marcus Johansson, and he's been probably their best forward in the last two World Championships. So, it was actually Bill Guerin that pointed out to me that Marcus has got a really good shot. And when I started looking into it, I think that there's something to it, and maybe Billy just knows that he's definitely on the radar. But could you imagine if they have 11 guys? That's crazy. That might be, I try to, even like Vegas and Colorado and teams like that, I don't think have that many.
Yeah. And I know you asked Bill about this, but you saw the injuries that came out of the Four Nations. Yeah. You saw how physical and fast that tournament is, and it'll be obviously 3 feet smaller ice surface now going into Milan. That we wrote last week about that dimensions there. I guess nothing. He's not going to say that he's worried that they're going to get injured. He wants them to all go, but there's still a realistic big picture concern here with how well these guys play and how hard they play, that you could have some lingering effects with your team.
Absolutely. Look, Billy's like, he's not worrying about this stuff, and really, what can he do? These guys are there or they're not there, right? So he's like, he basically was saying that I spend too much time worrying, which, there's a reason why I have no fingernails and no hair. So he's not wrong about that. Where I'd be more concerned is fatigue, because we saw a lot of teams, including the Wild, that had a bunch of guys at the Four Nations last year come back and really had trouble getting started again. Edmonton, Detroit. I remember talking to Dylan Larkin and Lucas Raymond about just how much it took for them to get going. And the Wild obviously struggled throughout the month of March. And Eriksson came back with a broken leg, essentially. And clearly Brodin didn't come back the healthiest as well. And there's a fatigue factor. Remember, Boldy wasn't great right after the Four Nations. And this is going to be a lot more games with a lot more practices than we saw in Boston and Montreal. So we'll see where it goes. The one thing that Billy made very clear is that if something happens, if somebody gets hurt, they'll react to it. They come back from Milan. I think the gold medal game is like the 22nd or 23rd. And then they come back from Milan, and March 6th is the trade deadline. So there's always going to be the ability to react if something, God forbid, happens. The good news is that Kirill Kaprizov will get to rest throughout the break. And unfortunately, Norway and Austria didn't qualify, or the Wild could have 14 guys there. It's crazy. Right?
Yeah, you got that many guys, and your whole first line is not part of that. And we don't have to wrap here by any means, but I do have to stem off of that for our Waggle Golf question this week, guys. Final question brought to you, as always, by our good friends at Waggle Golf. First, make sure you head over to getyourwaggleon.com, throw in promo code SP10 to take 10% off your entire order. All the holiday gifts, hats, quarter zips, polos, hoodies, vests, they've got it all. I want to hear what both of you thought about the Team USA Jon Hamm promo.
I liked it. I've actually had it for a couple days, which is why I was able to. I didn't realize. So the embargo was lifted at 8:10 yesterday. So I tweeted it out, And I always kind of wondered, I'm like, how would they know the exact time that it was going to be on Sunday Night Football? Because obviously you never know when the TV timeouts are coming. And then I realized very quickly that I beat them to the punch by 25 minutes.
Oh my God.
One, I got an email, and two, all of a sudden at like 8:30 something, all of a sudden I saw my Twitter account. I was wondering why I was getting no reaction. Like, here's the Sunday night thing.
Yeah.
So I loved it. First of all, I like Jon Hamm. I've gotten to meet him a couple times. The 2 times I've met him, I've made the joke to him, because obviously he's been in everything, right? But I made the joke to him that, nobody's been better in Curb Your Enthusiasm than you, and he loves that because nobody ever brings up Curb to him. So I love him, and then I just thought it was funny, the Canadian tears, and Eichel was hilarious in it. Although Eichel, for some reason, they forgot him in the press release. But yeah, Quinn Hughes is in it. We actually see Quinn smiling, which is his
crazy.
His resting face is usually a unhappiness. So that was fun. And obviously the Kachucks and Charlie McAvoy is in there, who's basically Brock Faber's doppelganger. So that was a good commercial. I don't know, what do you think of it?
I thought it was great. I thought it was funny with the highlights from the Four Nations in the fight. Like, what happened? And they show the highlights from the fights, things like that. Like, can we just hug it out, guys? No.
Yeah.
But like, I hope they do more of that stuff. I think
there is. I got a list of all their promos, and there's,
nice.
There's, I could read them to you actually. There's a couple more with USA Hockey, if you care.
Any with Faber or Boldy in it?
One with Ray Romano and Sebastian Maniscalco. There's Glenn Powell and speed skater Jordan Stolz, Scarlett Johansson, and hopefully I'm allowed to say this, and Lindsey Vonn, who I know Joe knows well, Cynthia Erivo, and curlers. So Cynthia, I clearly got that name wrong, and I'm sure everybody knows who she is. Curlers Corey Dropkin and Corey Deese. I'm embarrassing myself right now. Ariana Grande, who I watched get hit by a puck once as a kid at a Panthers game, and there's a couple others that I'm not even going to try to pronounce their names. So
is that like well known? I had no idea that Ariana Grande 1 went to a Panthers game, 2 got hit with a puck in the process.
Yeah, and then actually I could find my article from the time. When, like, obviously having no idea that she was going to be a famous pop star, but she gets hit by a puck, and then she rode the Zamboni with her mom as like sort of like a sorry at like a game 2 or 3 later. So if you look this up, you'll actually find my byline on it, the Sun Sentinel at the time. Pretty funny. Yeah.
Sorry you got hit by a puck.
Yeah,
have a Zamboni ride.
It was like in 98 or 99.
That's
crazy.
Yeah. She's from Boca, where I'm from. So I hope I was allowed to read all that.
You can just message me sometime later today if that's not the case.
We can edit that part out, or at least some of the part out. At least we know that commercial was live by the time this podcast goes up on Wednesday.
I love my reaction was the same as Jon Hamm's. Like, I was not ready for that. I was just like, oh yeah, he's gonna say it's all about winning gold and about your country. Wait, what? Canadian tears? Okay.
Yeah, I just can't imagine that NBC would send me that list if I wasn't allowed to rate it. So go with it.
Ignorance is bliss sometimes, It's good for the it's good for the game. The promotion is good.
Who's listening to the Fellowship of the Ring podcast?
Right.
Anyway?
Yeah.
2 people are going to go crazy with this.
Yeah. No, but any more questions, Scott? I think I'm good. But
my one question, I guess, and this doesn't have to go too deep, but if guys like, say, a Juracek, a Spacek, they go and have really big Olympic performances, do GMs put a lot of stock into that, or do they kind of separate and categorize that differently?
No, I think so. I remember in '98 when Yaroslav Spacek went to Nagano and had an unbelievable freaking tournament, and it was a huge reason why he wound up in the NHL. So, and a long career in the NHL. I covered him in Florida. I do think so. I mean, you see it all the time. One reason why Sam Halava is a member of the Wild is because of how good he's been on the international stage in the World Championships and things like that. So I absolutely think that there's a chance of that. And so actually, it's a great point, Scott. Like, I think that, like if the Wild ever wanted to trade a Spacek or Juracek, this is a good way for them to showcase themselves. Same thing with Halava. Like, Halava is going to be a free agent, I think, after this year. And I can't imagine, even if the Wild wanted him back, and I can't imagine that they will right now, the way that he's played down in Iowa. But look, I mean, this guy's got to showcase himself, and I can't imagine he's going to want to come back to Minnesota when he's just saw Gustafsson sign for long term, and he knows that Jesper Wallstedt's now the probably future here, so he's got no chance of being an NHLer here. So this is a great way for him to showcase himself. Sounds like a good insider. Great story idea, Scott. Thank you.
They like a spot check, I think, too. I mean, especially a guy who probably doesn't think he has a spot here in the blue line with the Wild. Like, I think he'd be a great, if they don't keep him, a great trade chip.
I wish he asked this question yesterday. I would have thrown this in today's insider. Would have been perfect for those little capsules.
Yeah, we can save it for a couple weeks from now when we're.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, but
back pocket.
Off day story while I'm in Milan. Actually, there's gonna be no off days. So.
You'll be covered in women's hockey then. You don't have any off days.
That's true.
So, well, thanks again for joining us. I will see you, I guess, in a week or so, depending on the schedule. So I will see you before Christmas, I think.
Yeah. Wild fans are not going to like my tweets in the next 5 days because I'm going to be at 2 rivalry series games and an Edmonton Oilers Sabres game and an Edmonton Oilers Red Wings game. So I'm going to be like, people are going to be so confused with all of a sudden I'm like, Patrick Kane just scored.
Yeah. So. I think Zuccarello is going to give you so much crap when you get back.
Oh, it's ridiculous. He knows my schedule better than me.
So. Well, I was in the room the other day, and he was like, Smitty. I'm like, what? He goes, are you tweeting something? I'm like, no, I was messaging Russo. He goes, don't message Russo. He's not on the trip. Just because he wants all the good trips, blah, 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 blah. He's not here.
He did point that out to me last time I saw him, that he goes, you're going on this trip? And I said, no. He goes, that's shocker. Edmonton, Vancouver, Calgary, and Seattle. That I'm like, please. Like, Joe's got both New York trips. He's getting the Florida trip. Who wouldn't want to go to Vancouver and Seattle? And I'm going to Edmonton for 5 days here in the middle of December. So.
Yeah, I think he's got it all wrong. I think this is a pretty good trip, actually. But anyways, but yes, you will eventually be back on the road, and he will see your face a lot of times coming up, especially in the California Vegas trip. So
yeah.
But thanks again, and we will do it again sometime soon. Appreciate
all right.
it.
Yep.